Let's have a look at the position first. We have the king in the center, knights here, the rook is one on f file already, the other one on a1, the bishop is on c1 and h1. Now when you look at such a position for chess 960 or freestyle chess, you understand certain features, that the bishop on c1 already is on the normal square, bishop on h1 is like already fianchettoed, queen on b1 is slightly awkwardly placed, but the rook is on f1. So if the knights come out, then the king can actually castle and go to its normal square. All these things taken into consideration before the game begins. The players shake hands. What is Gukesh's first move going to be? He plays c4 and immediately you can see the queen attacks the h7 pawn. That's how alert the players ought to be in chess 960, in freestyle chess, because if they do not spot it, they can lose the game right out of the opening. g6 played by Ding, g3 by Gukesh, and you can see his bishop has already opened up. So has Ding's bishop here, and now Ding plays his pawn to c5. We have the symmetrical English, and Gukesh brings his knight out to f3. One of the ideas that Gukesh is angling for is move the knight and castle it, and he'll be in normal territory. But what is not normal is this move knight d6 by Ding. This knight is not well placed actually, because it stops the pawn from advancing, and Gukesh makes a very simple move telling Ding to actually prove that his knight on d6 is well placed. Well, it's actually not so well placed here, and Ding has to now play carefully. White already has a very pleasant position. His bishop is open, his knight is ready to move to c2, castling is coming in. What is Ding going to do? He plays f5. Whoa, he's going for some kind of a Dutch setup. Also, he wants to maybe just put his knight back on f7 and then play d6. You see Gukesh now having a sip of water there and getting ready for what his next plan is going to be. He's already played the opening quite well. We are just on move number 4, but already one can sense that White's position looks more harmonious. Knight c2 played, and there you have it. Gukesh is going towards short castling. Knight f7, Ding plays his knight back, wants to free his d pawn so that the bishop can open up. Also is aiming for the e5 break perhaps. We have castling with the king just moving from c1 to g1 because the rook was already on f1, and now Ding brings his knight out to f6. Pause a bit here. Think, what would you play if you were in Gukesh's shoes? b4. What a move by Gukesh. Fantastic. The bishop is blocked by its knight. The rook is in the line of fire, but Gukesh does not care. He plays b4, opens up his queen. Bishop is also opened up. One of the key things you ought to be doing in freestyle chess is care about each and every piece of yours. Look at Gukesh's pieces. Queen in action. He takes the pawn. Knight in action. Knight in action. Bishop in action. This bishop also opening up. Now he'll actually take with the queen, and then the rook can also join in the game. Fantastic opening play by Gukesh. d6 played, and that's why you can see he's already significantly better out of the opening. He just understood the position much better than Ding. Now, what do you do next is the question. I think one natural move is to play rook b1. He goes bishop b2, and now short castle here by Ding. He really nicely moved his king from d8 to g8. And here Gukesh brings his knight out to e3. He's looking at the d5 square. That's a very juicy square for the knight. But okay, the black knight is controlling the d5 square as well. Now Ding must remain careful. Firstly, his queen is a little bit passive, but a good idea is to play e5, kind of gaining the center and gaining more space, because Gukesh has a positional threat now. Bishop d7, and can you see it? What is the move that Gukesh can play? He can of course go rook b1, which is a fine move, but there's something better. There's something more concrete that Gukesh can do. Can you find it? This is a very, very pretty idea, and I think Gukesh has spotted it. He's thinking about it, and it can be a very, very strong move here. Yes, he plays it. Bishop takes f6. What a move. Ding instantly captures it with the bishop and Gukesh moves his knight into the center. What a move this is. He's giving up his rook on a1. He doesn't care for it. So, just going back, bishop f6, if you took with the pawn, that was catastrophic because the bishop on h8 is killed. Ding was banking on the fact that he could attack the rook. He thought that maybe Gukesh would move his rook here and then he could control the d5 square and also the b7 pawn. But Gukesh simply goes knight d5 and tells Ding that my rook is not as important as your bishop. And with this, the bishop cannot move because if it moves, the e7 pawn hangs. Yes, it can take the rook, but otherwise it can't go back to g7. So knight d8 might be the best option here if you take on f6, rook f6, and white is slightly better. But you can see that Ding is unhappy with his position already. He takes on e1, he chops it off. Gukesh makes an intermezzo check. King goes to g7 and takes on a1. Let's take stock of the situation. What has happened here? Gukesh has a pawn and a knight for a rook. But more importantly, look at this square on d5. Knight comes to e5. This square on d5 is a permanent outpost for the knight. Also, the bishop is very powerful on the long diagonal. Right now, Ding wants to trade off a pair of knights, but Gukesh is not interested. He pins the knight here and tells Ding, what do you want to do next here? Well, for Ding, maybe the best idea is to move his king away. That is what he can do, or he may want to even move his bishop somewhere. This is not easy. I really like when players, pour water in glass and then drink it, like how Gukesh is doing here. Like generally you see chess players opening a bottle and just drinking, but this is just so much more classy, You have this very nice bottle of water and Gukesh now takes a sip there with his glass. It's aqua panna that he's drinking and then puts his glass on the side again. Whew. Classy stuff there. But anyway, position after 15 moves is very much in Gukesh's favor. Ding is already upset in this tournament because he's had 3 losses. This is round number 4 and this might be his 4th loss if he's not careful. He plays his rook to e8, attacking Gukesh's knight on e7. The knight has to move away, where of course it will go back to the d5 square. That's logical here. And Gukesh brings his knight back to d5 and puts it on the central square. One of the reasons why white is so much better in this position is because each of his piece is so good. Now queen d8 played here and Gukesh goes knight d4. His idea is to put his pawn on f4 to attack this pinned knight so the king moves away, which is logical. And now rook b1, again bringing all the pieces in the game. Gukesh is playing such logical chess, it can even be played by a beginner. It's just that when you weave it all together, it's not so easy to execute. Queen a3 played. Now the queen double attacks the pawn on d6 and the pawn on a7. How is Ding going to defend? He goes bishop c6, does 2 things. First of all, he's now supporting his pawn with the queen. And the other thing is that now the bishop is attacking the knight on d5. What is Gukesh's next plan? h3. Whew. It's like this slow hand of death. Gukesh is saying to Ding, I don't have to do anything. I'm just waiting here. What's your next move? Well, actually, Gukesh didn't want to take this pawn because rook a8 would give counterplay. And so he played h3. Ding goes back to f8. And now the knight jumps in to b5. The knight is coming in and attacking the d6 pawn. So Ding takes the knight, rook takes, and the knight goes back to c6, wanting to come to d4, but immediately Gukesh plays e3, taking control of the d4 square, and also the e2 pawn is no longer hanging. King to f7 played. Now, white is better. That is without question. But how do you continue? How are you going to find that breakthrough is the question. The knight on d5 is well placed. Here, Ding has given up this pawn. I guess the reason for that is that he may want to just trade a few pieces here and hope that this d3 weakness might haunt white at some point. But Gukesh can actually chop off the pawn on b7. But is this what Gukesh wants to do? Also, the d3 pawn is hanging, so be careful there. He goes knight f4. Now with this move, he's defending the pawn on d3 and also just opening up the bishop to come to d5. This is very nice chess because white's pieces are all helping each other to get to good squares. Now Ding attacks the knight. The knight is attacked. If the knight moves, then maybe the d3 pawn is falling. So carefully, this has to be navigated. What to do here is the question. I think Gukesh has the answer. He gives a check, king comes up, and now he can move his knight away because then the knight on e5 is pinned. So the pawn d3 is no longer hanging. So knight comes back to e2 with the idea of f4. King comes to g6. And here he goes d4, pushing the pawn forward. The knight on e5 is attacked. Knight goes back. And now I guess it's time to reap the rewards of your hard work. Do you take the pawn on b7? Gukesh says, not so soon. I am happy to be waiting. He's pinned this pawn on f5. He wants to go g4 and knight g3. That's his idea. Knight comes to f6. And now the bishop is attacked. Do we go g4? That looks so tempting, you know. That's such a tempting move, just to play your pawn to g4. No, he first chops off the pawn on b7. If you look at the material now, white has 2 pawns and a bishop for a rook. That's already good enough material. Queen comes up to d7. And now Gukesh needs to find his next plan here. He goes g4, great move. The pawn is pinned. He goes rook e7. King g7 would have been much better, but rook e7, the idea is to win this bishop because it is attacked now 3 times. He goes bishop c6, great move because now the rook is hanging. So if you are careless and you take here, I can first take on f5 and then take on b8. So he takes on b5, pawn takes on b5, and now f5 is anyway soft. The queen is attacking here. The knight is coming in. So he goes queen e6 and the knight jumps to g3. Attacking f5, king goes back. And it's time to now take the pawn on f5. Gukesh will be then 3 pawns and a bishop for a rook. That's a lot of material there, which is already winning position. You can see Ding. He knows the writing is on the wall. He's going to lose this. But what a game by Gukesh, right? He's just played this so smoothly. He's not given Ding any chance. He's not been in any hurry to prove his compensation for the material loss. Queen goes to b4, attacking the pawn on d6. Also, queen can jump to a5. He goes d5, queen a5, attacking the rook. The rook cannot be defended. There's hardly any move. a7 is falling. It's time to call it a day. Ding Liren is thinking for his move. He's already done. He has 7 minutes on the clock, but that's not enough. He resigns. Gukesh beats another world champion on the same day after beating Magnus Carlsen in round 2.